Steve Sarkisian spoke to the media today, and it led to an interesting conversation. Is the answer to the offensive line struggles hiding in plain sight?
Yards shy of the record. Williams breaks a hole. Williams, hello record book. Ricky Williams runs to the Hall of Fame. Touchback. Ricky Williams, touchdown.
Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Vince looks. Under pressure. He'll tuck it in run. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown Texas. Touchdown Vince Young. He's done it again.
Longhorn Nation, we're back.
Welcome into another edition of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Galatzan. Joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Zach Dimmitt. And Zach, Steve Sarkisian spoke to the media on Monday, and it's nice in the offseason to have some football content, some fresh football content to discuss. He talked everything from offensive line to Cam Coleman, running backs, injury news, secondary, Will Muschamp, you name it. We're going to talk about this stuff kind of all week. But the first thing I wanted to start with here, Zach, was the offensive line, because that is the question and the concern of every Texas Longhorns fan out there. And it was a big point of contention last year, specifically at the left guard spot, where you kind of had a revolving door starting the year with Connor Stroh against Ohio State. Then Nick Brooks kind of got in there and was a starter for a little while. And then eventually what you ended up on was Cole Hudson at left guard, Connor Robertson at center, and that's kind of how you finish the year at that spot. Brandon Baker obviously being the right tackle all year long. But it's been a thing all year in all offseason, because last year Arch Manning was running for his life, and he was constantly battered and bruised and beaten throughout the entire year. So that is first and foremost what every Texas fan wanted the Longhorns to fix coming into this offseason with the transfer portal. And it seems like they've done so. They brought in Melvin Siani at right tackle, who graded out excellently on PFF. He is going to be your starter at right tackle every day and going to be fantastic. They also brought in second-team All-American Lawrence Seymour out of Western Kentucky. His waiver is still pending, which we'll talk about in a minute. But assuming he gets approved, he will also likely be slotted in as a starter, which leaves the question, who will be the starter at left guard? For a long time, since all the transfer portal dust settled, most assumed Brandon Baker would move from right tackle to left guard, and that still may be the case. But it also brings up another interesting conversation. And the genesis of this conversation is actually Ian Boyd from Inside Texas. He posted a tweet earlier today based on a Sark quote that's, and I'll get to that in a second. But first of all, we'll start off with the quote from Sark. He said, "I feel very good about the additions of Melvin Siani, Dylan Sikorsky, Jonte Newman, and Lawrence Seymour. I feel good about the young players who have come into our program already. I feel good about the guys coming off injury. I feel very good about Andre Kojo coming back, and I feel very comfortable with that group," which is music to our ears for sure. The fact that he is comfortable with that group is fantastic, because that's what they need is a solid, reliable offensive line. But Ian Boyd from Inside Texas, after that quote, tweeted this, and this is kind of where I want to start the conversation. He said, Kojo's return is meaningful. Have to wonder if he might have been the solution at left guard had he not been injured last year. Now, as most remember, Andre Kojo was supposed to start at right tackle before he went down with an injury, leading to the starting position of Brandon Baker. And it's interesting to talk about, Zach, right? Because Brandon Baker is a bit of a smaller guy, a little bit more nimble and quick as opposed to powerful. He's around 300 pounds as far as I know. Andre Kojo, on the other hand, is 6'6", 335 pounds, and is known as a bit more of a bruiser and a mauler in the run game. So perhaps, and maybe we're jumping a little bit to conclusions, but hey, it's the offseason. Perhaps the answer at left guard has been staring us, in the face and has been hiding in plain sight this entire time. maybe it's Andre Kojo, and he will actually be the one that slots into left guard, allowing Brandon Baker to kind of play the swing tackle position and provide depth at both left and right tackle behind Melvin Siani and Trevor Gooseby, respectively.
Yeah, with Andre Kojo's injury, it happened in August, and that feels like an eternity ago. So he kind of became maybe a forgotten name in that room, along with, adding all these other additions piling on top of that. So yeah, maybe it has been staring us in the face. We really don't know. And maybe the spring game will give us some sort of insight of what it could look like. Of course, you're having two different starting offensive lines kind of going against each other potentially. We'll see how those rosters play out in April when the orange-white spring game kicks off. But yeah, Texas, you could argue Texas was one good offensive line, one good game from the offensive line away from making it to the CFP against Florida. They only lost by 8. If you take out a few sacks of Arch Manning from that game, maybe the Longhorns win. And maybe if Andre Kojo hadn't been injured, of course, the entire offensive line was not playing up to standard in that one. So one guy may not have made the difference. But if Andre Kojo wasn't injured and he's in that game, who knows what the season could have looked like? Who knows if Texas could have made it to the CFP? Because, of course, that one loss is pretty much what held them back. So interesting conversation, interesting hypothetical. But instead of looking back towards last season, we can now look forward and think about what that group could look like with Andre Kojo. And it's certainly interesting because if he slots in as a starter, you then have added depth and feel good about that depth moving forward because let's face it, you're going to have some injuries here and there. You, of course, hope that nothing's long-term or anything, but some of these guys might miss a game or two. They get banged up during the season. And it may not be a super serious injury, but holding someone out for one game and relying on your depth is going to be big. And Texas might have to do that. So if Andre Kojo, even if he doesn't start, even if he's a depth guy, you feel pretty comfortable about what he can do with this offensive line. I mean, Trevor Gooseby, Melvin Siani, they're going to hold things down on the tackle spots. We know that much. But yeah, left guard, and just both the guard spots, it was kind of interesting to see what they do there. And so Andre Kojo, adding him to the mix, Dylan Sikorsky, another depth piece, even the freshman as well. And then you got Jonte Newman coming in from A&M. So there's a lot of interesting depth pieces there. And if Andre Kojo is your best guy, is your best number 6 offensive lineman, you're doing some pretty good things as a group. So we just got to wait and see what happens. We're still months away from the season. I don't know the exact timeline for his injury recovery. Of course, Stark said he really likes what he's been seeing, but we know ACLs take quite a while to recover from, and it hasn't even been a year, not even close, since he suffered the injury. So we still got to wait and see what he's looking like. And I mentioned the spring game, but thinking about it, he's probably not even going to be ready for that unless he's just had some miraculous recovery and sped up his timeline, because that was in August. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. We're still months away from the season opener. But yeah, if he's in the starting lineup at left guard, you feel pretty good about that. As you mentioned, his bruising ability, he's bigger than Brandon Baker. So, but you trust Brandon Baker still. I know there was some rough patches last season with the entire unit, but Brandon Baker got a lot of experience last year. So even if he's not your starting left guard, you still feel pretty good about that group because of the experience he was able to get last season. So overall, there's a lot to be excited about with that group, with the returners and the new additions. And let's face it, there was, some rough patches last year. They had the offensive line got better a little bit as the season went on, but overall you can't really get much worse than what their lowest point was last season. So you feel pretty good about where things are headed this fall.
Yeah, and Brandon Baker got so much better towards the end of the year. He was unbelievable over really the last 3 weeks of the season. He was one of the better offensive linemen in the SEC over that time, according to PFF. So he did really well. And look, the Andre Kojo thing, it doesn't mean that he's going to start at left guard. It's just an idea, and props to Ian Boyd for bringing that one up, because first of all, he's a big football brain, really smart guy, knows his stuff. But second of all, it's something that I hadn't even really considered heading into this offseason. I mean, most people, including myself, imagine the starting offensive line will be from left to right: Gooseby, Brandon Baker, Connor Robertson, Lawrence Seymour, and Melvin Siani. It could be a little bit of a mix with the guards. They could play either spot. It would make sense for Brandon Baker to play left guard because he would eventually transition out to left tackle after Trevor Gooseby goes to the NFL after next season. But if you can add Andre Kojo to this mix, it would certainly be an interesting conversation and an interesting mix of talent up there. So it's worth keeping an eye on for sure. And then just real quick again, in regards to the offensive line, Sark gave an update on Lawrence Seymour's status. As we all know, we are still waiting on his waiver to officially clear and be accepted before he can, officially, I guess, be counted as part of the roster heading into next season. We feel pretty good about it, but Sark gave an update as well. He said, when we signed him, the NCAA allowed us to resubmit that waiver, I think, with some new information in a way that makes his case really compelling. Nothing has been decided yet, so I'm hesitant to say I'm confident in much, but I do think that with us having an opportunity to submit that waiver with our people, with some of our information Lawrence was able to supply us, and some of those from previous universities that he was at, we'll see where it goes, but we haven't gotten anything back yet. So that is just something to keep an eye on there. He is not officially cleared to go. The process, we should hear about it relatively soon, I would imagine, like over the next few weeks. And hopefully he will be ready to go and part of the conversation when spring football comes around, because that starts in about 2 weeks. Or 2.5 weeks. It starts March 9th. So you would like for him to have that decision in the bag, so to speak, when that date comes up.
Yeah, and let's say worst comes to worst, and he's not granted eligibility, which I don't think will happen. Is Texas then forced to go back into the portal and get another depth piece? I mean, Seymour's not a depth piece; he'd be a starter level guy. But do you go get a guy that could add some depth to the offensive line? And it'd be kind of a tough situation because if the Longhorns had potentially known ahead of time that, maybe Seymour isn't going to be playing with us, they probably wouldn't have gotten him out of the portal, obviously. So it puts the Longhorns in a tough situation. So you'd hope that all this is a moot point and he's able to be granted that eligibility. So many eligibility cases, it seems, in college football and college basketball recently. And it's kind of a headache to keep up with. But, that's just the reality we live in right now. And you certainly hope for the Longhorns case that Seymour is granted eligibility. But the way Sark was talking about it, it seemed like he's pretty confident. I wonder what he's hinting at when he says that we added something new to this recent proposal that strengthens his case. I wonder what that is. Maybe we'll find that out in the future. So hopefully everything works out. We don't have to worry about any new portal additions. Sark, of course, did say, I imagine that we're done adding from the portal, but never say never. So, or who knows what that looks like. You're not going to get a starter level guy out of the portal at this point in the offseason, that's for sure. So whether that's a new offensive lineman, if Seymour somehow isn't granted eligibility, or if that's somewhere else in the roster, we'll have to wait and see. But you just hope that we don't have to worry about any of that stuff and he's just able to play this fall.
Yeah, and if he is, then Texas should have a much, much, much improved offensive line because he's a really good player. Like I said, he was voted the second team All-American, so he's going to fit right in and do some good things. But let's change gears, Zach. We also heard a lot about Cam Coleman from Sark. And people were wondering what went into the decision to pick Texas over the other pursuers like Alabama, Texas Tech, and Texas A&M. Most people assume it's all about money. And, I'm sure that did play a role in his decision at a certain point. But according to Sark, it was about much more than that. And he really laid out a few different reasons as to why Coleman ended up in Austin, why he made that decision. And I'll just read off one of the quotes here first. Which one should we read? Here's the good one. Here's the money quote, so to speak. He came here with real intentions and a real reason of understanding. He wants to compete for a national championship, and he wants to put himself in the best position to get ready for the NFL. And if he came to a pro style offense for a reason, we've obviously had a pretty good recent history of receivers getting drafted down to the NFL fairly highly. And I'm sure he understands. So he understands why he came. That to me is probably obviously money did play a role, but that to me is probably the biggest reason why he came. He saw what Sark has done with Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond before his incident was going to be a first or second round pick.
Yep.
You could go down the list. Jordan Whittington. Sark has done a great job of putting receivers in the NFL. Cam Coleman wants to be a first round NFL draft pick, and he knows that Texas is going to be able to put him in the best position possible to reach that goal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, no matter which team Cam Coleman landed with, they knew that they were only going to be getting him for 1 year. That's just the reality. We, of course, hope that barring, that he doesn't suffer any sort of injury that would prevent him from heading to the NFL, and then he feels like he's forced to stay in college. You would hope that's not the case. That's the only scenario I can really see where he doesn't stay, or he stays at Texas for more than a year. So you knew this is the reality, but that was the reality with Adonai Mitchell and Matthew Golden to some extent as well. I mean, maybe Matthew Golden not as much because he really just boosted his stock a ton during that one season at Texas. So
yeah, he just kind of blew up.
Yeah, same, and a little bit with Adonai Mitchell too. You weren't really sure what you were going to get out of him, and he just became such a playmaker for Texas that season when they made to the CFP for the first time. So, but yeah, Cam Coleman, the blueprint has been set before him with some of these NFL guys at the wide receiver position from Texas. So he knows exactly, what this offense can do for him in that regard. Did money play a role in his decision? Of course it did. If Texas offered him $1 and Texas Tech's offering him $10 million, I mean, we know which one he would have picked, but there was more things than that on the table, of course. And if the offers were even between the other suitors, who knows what those offers would look like. Texas certainly had a much stronger argument, in my opinion, than any of the other teams that were on the table for him. Of course, as an Alabama native, he certainly had a reason if he wanted to enjoy the Crimson Tide, but it says a lot about what Texas's pitch was that he was able to eventually decide on the Longhorns. So you love to hear that from Sark. Cam Coleman, the talent is obviously there, but it goes beyond that with him, based on what Sark was saying, the way that he's been working hard already this offseason. I mean, we saw, the team posting pictures of him already getting to work at winter workouts a couple weeks ago. Does he have to show up right away and get to know his new teammates? No, he doesn't have to, I guess. I'm not sure what the timeline looks for all those guys to get to campus and whatnot or whatever, but you love to see that he's getting the work in early, because if you want to win a championship, it starts with winter workouts before you even dive into the playbook. So, and of course, we've seen reports as well that he's been already diving deep into the playbook with this offense months in advance before the start of the season. Of course, the spring game is coming around here soon and spring practice, so you're going to have to get to know that offense here pretty quickly. But yeah, everything that's been, all the news that's been coming out for Cam Coleman has been great to hear. The expectations are high, and it certainly seems that he's meeting those expectations early on. Of course, now we got to wait and see what he does on the field, but I think we all feel pretty confident about what he'll be able to deliver there. So, yeah, it's the first time Sark has spoke publicly about Cam Coleman since adding him out of the portal. So it was very interesting to see what he had to say, and I really expect that the compliments will just continue to flow as the offseason rolls on. So can't wait to see what Sark has to say, and can't wait to see eventually what Cam Coleman has to say about all this.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see the way he's going to fit into this offense. We've talked a little bit about it before, but I want to lay something out for you guys right now. We wonder what Cam Coleman and Ryan Wingo is going to look like together, and I would really highly suggest you look. Sorry, I got muted there for a second. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Anyway, I would highly suggest that everybody goes back and look at 2023 when you're talking about Cam Coleman and how he is going to look with Ryan Wingo, because I think it could look very similar to, kind of what Texas had with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, except I think it's going to be a bigger, more talented, more athletically gifted version of that duo. And instead of Quinn Ewers throwing passes, it's going to be Arch Manning with his ability to throw the ball deep and his insane arm, QB1 NFL draft type arm talent. So that's a very interesting thing to watch there going forward. Just keep an eye out for that. Cam Coleman's vertical ability with Ryan Wingo's ability to move across the field and kind of be your yak guy. It's going to be very, very difficult for opposing defenses to stop, especially when you put Emmett Mosley there in the slot and his ability to work in the middle of the field. It's going to be one of the best wide receiver trios in the country, very akin to Worthy and Mitchell and, of course, Jordan Whittington, who was the third receiver in that offense, except I think it's a more talented group of players. So just keep an eye out for that. I'm making a bit of a projection here, but that's kind of what we do in the offseason, so that's okay. Let's take a break here real quick, Zach. I'm going to try and fix my mic, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Grayson Littleton and some things that Sark mentioned about him today as well. So stick with us after this break, and we'll be right back.
This episode of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast is brought to you by Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. Custom Built Trailers is the largest in-stock trailer dealer in Mississippi with a variety of options to choose from. From flatbed goosenecks to bumper pull equipment trailers and car haulers to enclosed trailers and basic utility trailers, we do a little bit of everything. And if we don't have exactly what you're looking for in stock, we can typically have your custom built trailer built in 7 to 10 working days. 0% financing options are available, and we also deliver out of state. So give Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi a call at 601-722-9581 today and let us take care of your hauling needs. Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. If we don't have it, we'll be glad to build it.
All right, I'm back, and Zach is back, and I think I fixed my mic, Zach, so we'll see how that goes going forward. I'm not really sure what happened there, but that's okay. Okay, so another thing that was really interesting about what Sark had to say today in regards to, the defense, as opposed to, he talked a lot about the offense, the new running backs, which we'll get into tomorrow, again, Cam Coleman and the offensive line and all that stuff. But he also had a very interesting tidbit about the secondary and Grayson Littleton, and where he could fit into to Will Muschamp's new defense next year. And he said he was asked, first of all, if Grayson Littleton could move from his star/nickel position to outside corner, which has been a big topic of debate this offseason. And Sark responded with, surely you're going to see Grayson do both. You're going to see him play some nickel. You're going to and some at corner. You're going to see Xavier Filsaime play some safety and some nickel. I'm using those two guys as an easy example, but I think a lot of our guys, we're going to try to develop them to do more than just kind of being one-trick ponies. The more they can do, the better it's going to be for us long-term. And I think that that's incredibly interesting because there is a little bit of a question mark at the corner spot to some people because you lose Manny Muhammad, you bring in Bo Masco, but the rest of it is just youth and projection to a certain extent. I mean, Cade Phillips, Warren Roberson, Kobe Black, Wardell Mack, those are all guys who are still young and developing, and while we like their upside a ton, Grayson Littleton was able to prove more on the field last year than any of those guys really were, like over an extended period of time. So the assumption for a lot of people was he would move to the outside, Wardell Mack would play at the star position, or they would find another body for the star position that was more suited to that role. But it appears that Grayson Littleton, kind of like Jahdae Barron, is going to be doing a little bit of both, which should lead to some very interesting combinations in the secondary next year with, there's going to be a couple of like firm starters in there, I believe. Like Bo Masco, I think, will be one of those. Jelani McDonald will be another one. and maybe Derek Williams at safety as well. But outside of that, it feels like it's kind of open, and I like that Sark is being open about it and willing to move Grayson Littleton around and find the best combinations for Will Muschamp's secondary back there.
Yeah, and if we're already mentioning Jahdae Barron with Grayson Littleton, I mean, Jahdae Barron was not nearly as productive as a true freshman as Grayson Littleton was. So just imagine what this guy can eventually do after 2 more years on campus before he inevitably heads to the NFL. So, yeah, you love to see that. Very interesting to hear what Sark had to say, especially about Xavier Filsaime in particular. Obviously he said it's not just those 2 guys, but yeah, I don't think, it was a expectation when the Longhorns first got Xavier Filsaime out of high school that he would be potentially a guy that could play both. So I think he's come on pretty strongly. And this secondary as a whole, I've mentioned it before, I really love that they're leaning heavily on guys that they recruited out of high school. So they've been in the system now. Bo Masco, of course, really the only transfer guy, unless I'm just forgetting someone, but I'm pretty sure the only transfer guy they got for the secondary was Bo Masco, and that what an addition that was. So, yeah, I like to see that. You had multiple guys that were going to enter the portal: Wardell Mack, Kobe Black, Derek Williams Jr. You get all those guys to return after potentially losing 3 of them. You love to see that. So Cade Phillips as well, another guy that I feel pretty confident about next season. So if he's already hinting at Filsaime and Littleton being multi-position guys, who really knows what the rest of that could look like with some of these other guys in the secondary. So now you already know what you're getting out of Jelani McDonald. Of course, Bo Masco, I don't expect him to be moving around. You're going to lean on him as your CB1. But these other guys, what does that look like for them? Not only this season, but next season as well, or this upcoming season, but 2027 as well. If they can play multi positions, and how their stock could potentially be boosted as time goes on. I like what Sark said there. And really excited about Grayson Littleton this upcoming season, because if we got a taste of what he can do as a true freshman, it's pretty crazy to imagine what he'll be able to do in 2027 or 2026, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it is super interesting because you really have 4 different guys who can play in the nickel/star position and be really effective there. Really 5 if you include Jelani McDonald, though I don't think that he's going to be involved in that conversation. Grayson Littleton obviously played a ton there last year, and I expect him to play there next year as well. Wardell Mack is also a great fit for that position. Kobe Black could play that position. Xavier Filsaime, he already said, is going to come down and play that position. So it really allows you a lot of different combinations based on matchups and the different sets that you want to run to play there in the slot like that. It's like a hybrid slot safety position. That is really designed to not only be, in pass coverage, but also help out some in the run game. We all saw Jahdae Barron thrive there in 2023 before he moved to outside corner in 2024. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do, because it is a lot of play, like 4 different guys by my count who at least flirted with the transfer portal or entered at one point, with Derek Williams, Kobe Black, Warren Roberson, and Wardell Mack. You get all of them back in large part because of Will Muschamp, but also because of the addition of Blake Gideon coming in as well, who recruited a bunch of those guys and got them to stick around as well. So we'll see where it goes. I feel very confident that Will Muschamp is going to be able to get the best out of this secondary, because he is a secondary guy, and that has always been his strength. So he will find the right combination. He will get these guys to play a more aggressive man coverage, type of defense back there. For the most part, it's going to be very different than what we saw under Pete Kwiatkowski, which I think is a good thing in everybody's mind. And I in terms of where I think the secondary is going to be as opposed to where it was last year, yeah, you do lose some key players. You lose Michael Taff, you lose Manny Muhammad, but you bring back a ton of talent, and all of those guys are a little bit more experienced now. I think you have a better secondary coach in Blake Gideon than you had with Dwayne Akina. I think you've got a much better defensive coordinator, no disrespect to PK, with Will Muschamp as opposed to PK. So I think it's going to be a championship level secondary, and I think Muschamp is definitely going to get the best out of this group. But Zach, that's going to do it for today. We're going to be back tomorrow to talk about the running backs. We're going to recap the basketball game from this weekend that did not go the Longhorns' way, and also have a very interesting conversation about the Texas Longhorns offense heading into next season. But thank you so much for tuning into this edition of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and like our podcast and comment to let us know your thoughts below. It really helps us out with the algorithm on YouTube and social media and all those things. So we really appreciate that. But most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them, and we will catch you in the next one.